Could raising taxes on Vermont vacation homes help our housing shortage and fund schools?
A new report in front of state lawmakers outlines a path forward in raising taxes on second homes, which some say would take the pressure off of Vermont taxpayers. Channel 3's Calvin Cutler is live in the studio. Calvin, how are we taxed right now?
Well, Darren and Kiana, Vermont really has two tax classifications for tax collections: on both primary homesteads where people live and another on everything else: commercial buildings, apartments, farms, and second homes. According to the State Housing Finance Agency, almost 20% of Vermont homes are considered vacant, and 75% of those are classified as seasonal, occasional use, or vacation homes, which has some wondering if those homeowners should pay more.
If you can afford to purchase a home and not live in it, you can probably afford to pay a little bit more on your property taxes as well.
Last year's massive education reform bill also sets into motion the creation of a new tier of property taxes, which would essentially double the tax on second homes. Supporters like Brattleboro State Representative Emily Kornheiser say higher taxes on second homes could generate more revenue for schools and chip away at Vermont's housing shortage by pushing some of those vacation homes onto the market.
We're trying to both fix a big policy problem about a shortage of housing and make sure that we're making housing that people have more affordable.
But others warn of the potential for second homeowners to vote with their feet.
I've always described second homeowners as people who vacation here on steroids.
Peter Tucker with the Vermont Realtors Association worries steeper taxes on vacation homes could have unintended consequences, driving down property and overall grand list values, thereby raising the tax burden on the rest of Vermonters.
It will spread to the marketplace, and it will become consistent across the, all price points, basically.
There's still a lot that needs to be worked out, including defining what a second home is and avoiding rising taxes on properties like deer camps.
It's a much more challenging question than you would imagine.
Tax officials say analyzing properties across the state would be complex. Despite potentially adding hundreds of millions of dollars into Vermont schools, leaders say putting more money into the education fund won't solve systemic education issues.
Over the last 20 years, we've been dedicating more and more revenue to the education fund, and it has not done anything to stabilize property taxes. They have continued growing despite, putting more and more revenue sources in there.
Vermont is not alone in pursuing new taxes. States like California and Montana have considered higher taxes or surcharges on vacation homes. Now, this proposal is also tied to the sweeping education reforms and a major contingency that state lawmakers need to create and vote on larger consolidated school districts this year. Otherwise, this new tax on second homes will not move forward. Darren, Kiana.
Calvin, thank you.